One Mediator Media. A lot of world leaders out there are giving us a lot of predictions, a lot of stuff that's coming, and they're preparing us. Let's keep a close eye, and let's just go ahead and mediate.
Is the U.S. headed towards a national lockdown? That is the big question of the moment. And one of President-elect Biden's coronavirus advisors says the U.S. should shut down. However, Dr. Fauci believes that we can get through a second wave without a total lockdown. But there is one thing these men agree on. The darkest days of the pandemic are ahead.
We are entering this period that I call COVID hell.
We just are not taking this virus seriously.
Dr. Michael Osterholm, a coronavirus advisor to President-elect Biden, believes a national lockdown could bring the outbreak under control while we wait for vaccine distribution.
We could pay for a package right now to cover all of the wages, lost wages for individual workers. If we did that, then we could lock down for 4 to 6 weeks. And if we did that, we could drive the numbers down.
I believe that we can do it without a lockdown. I really do.
Dr. Fauci warns a national lockdown can be avoided if all Americans do their part.
So our options are lock down or do our part. So here's the issue. Here's what I'm concerned with. So either we do what we're supposed to, right? And so it comes back to us, falls on us, right? So we have a lockdown because people didn't listen. How do we know that? Or we have a 4 to 6 week minimum lockdown in which we're going to pay for everybody's salary. The government is just going to pay for everybody. Of course, everybody's going to be content, but where's that money coming from? Let's keep on going so we can find out. And we're going to see where this is headed and what the whole point to this is. Let's check it out. CNBC says Biden COVID advisor says U.S. lockdown of 4 to 6 weeks could control pandemic and revive economy. So ultimately, they're saying if we do this, if we have this lockdown, we're going to revive our economy. What does this mean? What are we talking about? And so it says shutting down businesses and paying people for lost wages for 4 to 6 weeks could help keep the coronavirus pandemic in check to get the economy on track until the vaccine is approved. Or it could also mean that we destroy our economy and then we start over. That's, I think, what is happening here. And so it says here, cases are rising as more people are growing tired of wearing masks and social distancing, suffering from so-called pandemic fatigue. Your fault. The reason this isn't working, it's your fault. I see everybody wearing masks. I have yet to run into somebody who doesn't. Is there somebody who doesn't? Of course. But the majority are following the rules because they're tired of this. They want this to go away. Yes, people are having some parties and all this stuff is happening. But again, it's not to the level where we'd say that's causing this or increasing it. I don't believe that's the case. So here he says we could pay for a package right now to cover all the wages, lost wages for individual workers, for losses to small companies, to medium-sized companies, or county governments. We could do all of that, he said. If we did that, then we could lock down for 4 to 6 weeks. How are we paying for this? How do you pay for every single worker out there? That's billions and billions of dollars. Where do we get that from? You have the arguments where, well, we spend so much on military, we spend so much on this, we'll just pull from there. Well, even where does that come from? There's a reason why we're trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. Now, our current debt even increased more because of COVID. Now we're going to increase it more. There is an end point. Let's keep going to find out what that is. So Fauci to UK think tank, coronavirus not going to be a pandemic for a lot longer. Now, here's just a quick article. I'm just going to briefly summarize it. So Fauci is saying that the vaccine is going to fix everything. Once we have that, pandemic is gone. Essentially saying that you must take it. So certainly it's not going to be a pandemic for a lot longer because I believe the vaccines are going to turn that around, said Fauci. If we get a vaccine campaign and by the second or third quarter of 2021, we have vaccinated a substantial portion of the people, I think it will be easily by the end of 2021 and perhaps even into the next year. So if we all get vaccinated, it'll just go away. That's what he's saying. Let's continue. So back to point A, right? Point A is we have solutions. What are the solutions? We're going to just stop the whole economy, stop everybody. We're going to have everybody stay home and we're going to cover your salary. We're going to pay for everything. And this money's going to come out of nowhere. Well, actually, it's not going to come out of nowhere. Let's talk about where that's coming from. And the next articles are going to discuss this very point.
I would agree that what this crisis is in the process of doing is it is accelerating a lot of pre-existing technological change. So we're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy. And it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers who, as Andrew just mentioned, it's relatively low paid public facing workers in the service sector who are bearing the brunt. This is largely minorities and women, or skewed toward minorities and women, and relatively low paid. So those people are going to struggle to get back to work in their old jobs, or in many cases in new jobs. There's going to be probably a substantial group of workers who are going to need support as they find their way in the post-pandemic economy, because it's going to be different in some fundamental ways.
So, according to CNN, the economy as we knew it might be over, Fed chairman says. So the head of the Fed is essentially saying the world as you knew it before is gone. It's no longer. So once we recover, post-vaccine, post all these things, your life is going to be very different. You're going to view things differently. And most affected will be those who essentially are low-skilled, right? Low-paying jobs. He mentioned minorities. He mentioned women. You're mostly going to be affected. This plan is not in your favor. Let's continue here. The economy we knew is probably a thing of the past, said Federal Chairman Jerome Powell on Thursday. For example, it's likely that lower paid workers, as well as those jobs requiring face-to-face interactions, such as retail or restaurant workers, will shoulder most of the burden of this shift. They're going to make a substantial change to the way we conduct business. As you have noticed, many businesses are going out of business, right? They're no longer functioning. Many businesses we're being left with these huge corporate conglomerates, right? These companies, Amazon, Target, Walmart, they're being affected, but not like the small business. Even those are already very automated. And so the direction they're moving us is into a more automated world where things are run by robots. It's automated, a little more AI. There's a whole different world that they're preparing us for. That's what they're trying to say here. And so if you think you're just going to come back from this and just go back to your regular job and all these things, they're finding that, hey, we don't really need you. We're running the economy anyway. We're still making profits. We're still having things produced, yet we have fewer people working. On top of that, and we'll cover this right now, there are groups out there that have been waiting for the right moment to bring in their system and get rid of ours. Interesting time considering this election, considering what's happening, considering what's shifting right now. And many people will be happy with the shift, right? Because it covers a whole lot of stuff that the progressive side wants. They want a more socialistic approach. They want a Green Deal. They want all these things. It's all moving in that direction. And they're saying, you're going to get it whether you like it or not. And this pandemic just gave us the right environment to do that. So let's continue. So there's a glimpse into what they're looking at doing, what's coming, right? So it's a huge change in terms of technology, a huge change in terms of how we will be integrated into technology. They're really looking at that. You've seen things out there on Elon Musk and how he's trying to essentially create systems where they're integrated into humans. There's a lot of change coming up. And they also mentioned that some people will not have the technical skills that they need, right? And they're already going to be replaced. Now, those people will have to acquire these skills, but they don't say or what. So as we know, not everybody has those skills, and not everybody is apt to those skills, right? So different people have different gifts to share, different skills that they can produce. But if you don't fall into what's coming, what's going to happen to you? They don't address that. They don't. So how will you contribute? Or how will you not contribute, right? So let's continue seeing what happens. So that leads us to something we briefly covered a few episodes ago. And so Klaus Schwab, vision of a post-COVID world and how the economy can work with nature, the Great Reset podcast. So this dude here, this guy, his goal, and he's been working on it, I think, for 40 years. His goal is to bring about a different system, to bring about a more equitable system, to bring about a greener system, to bring about all these things that sound great, all these things that sound pro-Bernie, progressive. Essentially, it's a socialist system. And we're going to cover some of those points right now. His goal is to bring about this new system. Let's dig into it. So here we have, it's from the World Economic Forum. It says, now is the time for a great reset. Again, we covered this briefly, but let's go into a little more detail. It says, to achieve a better outcome, the world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies, from education to social contracts and working conditions every country from the United States. So in other words, this country needs to change. To China, which is already communist, must participate. Not should, not if you want to, must. And every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed. In short, we need a great reset of what? Of capitalism. We need to change this system. The U.S. system is one of the last systems running like this. There are very few. Many systems are, well, for one, broken, but number two, definitely not ours. Left unaddressed, these crises, together with COVID-19, will deepen and leave the world even less sustainable, less equal, and more fragile. This is essentially the socialist system that they've been trying to bring, and they've been waiting for the right time. So let's take a look at that. So he calls this the fourth industrial revolution. And this is, again, the founder of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab. It says, ubiquitous mobile supercomputing, intelligent robots, self-driving cars, neurotechnological brain enhancements, genetic editing. These are all components of this system that they're talking about. These are the changes that are coming. These are the changes where they say, whoa, we can really bring this in right now because everybody's out of luck anyway. So we can just say, hey, tough cookie. This is how it goes. He is convinced that we are at the beginning of a revolution that is fundamentally changing the way we live, work, and relate to one another, which he explores in his new book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution. So he says, in particular, Schwab calls for leaders and citizens together to shape a future that works for putting all people first, empowering them, and constantly reminding ourselves that all of these new technologies are first and foremost tools made by people for people. They're pushing the communist Marxist agenda here. It's all about the means of production. It's all about who owns it. It's all about that the people own the means of production. Again, many people will be happy with that. The issue is, if you're not happy with that, if you're not in agreement with government ownership of everything, if you're not in agreement with essentially, yes, everybody receives an equal amount, but you remove all sense of property, all sense of ownership. If you're not in agreement with that, this is a major problem, and the United States is a major roadblock. So keep that in mind in terms of what's happening right now. So what he calls it's a stakeholder capitalism. And it says among the key stakeholders are computers, suppliers, employees, shareholders, and local communities. And so ultimately, it says supporters of stakeholder capitalism believe that serving the interests of all stakeholders, as opposed to only shareholders, is essential to long-term success and health of any business. Now, that is correct. Yes, we do have some greed. We do have corporate greed, and we do have people who want to earn as much as possible. The issue, though, is that, again, it's this utopian society where where people own the means of production. So you own part of the company, you make decisions, and it no longer really belongs to the people who put it together. It's interesting the way it works. When you look at communist societies, they don't function very well. They don't. If you look at China, I mean, in their case, it's more of a copycat society. You remove the desire or the instinctual ability or want to create, to be creative. China is known for copying other creative societies and then improving on it and then making it their own. But they're not really known for an innovative society. Communism does not lead us in that direction, and Marxism leads to communism. That's just essentially, that's why he wrote the Communist Manifesto.
So what separates the fourth industrial revolution from the third? Experts say the main difference is that technology is merging more and more with humans' lives, and that technological change is happening faster than ever. Consider this. It took 75 years for 100 million users to adopt the telephone. Instagram signed up 100 million users in just 2 years, while Pokemon Go caught that amount in 1 month. 3D printing is just one example of fast-paced technology in the fourth industrial revolution. Today, you can have a hip replacement from a 3D printed bone, or use a 3D printed bionic arm. Talk about blurring the line between humans and technology, right? But some companies and governments are struggling to keep up with the fast pace of technological change. Research shows innovators, investors, and shareholders benefit the most from innovation. The risk is that the fourth industrial revolution is making inequality, which is already a big issue, even worse. One study found billionaires have driven almost 80% of the 40 main breakthrough innovations over the last 40 years. That's a problem when the richest 1% of households already own nearly half of the world's wealth. Experts warn we are in a winner-takes-all economy, where high-skilled workers are rewarded with high pay and the rest of workers are left out. Studies confirm technologies like AI will eliminate some jobs and create demand for new skills that many workers don't have. The World Economic Forum says a majority of leaders don't have confidence their organizations are ready for the changes associated with the fourth industrial revolution. With tech changing fast every day, it's time to catch up.
Social change sometimes follows a pattern described by the late economist Rudy Dornbush. Things take longer to happen than you think they will, but then they happen much faster than you thought they could. We are at a moment now in the climate struggle that will determine what the world in 2023 looks like. Will we be celebrating? Will we breathe sighs of relief? Or will we struggle with the burden of guilt that we are condemning the next generation to an impossible future? This year is the beginning of the first 5-year review period where every nation in the world that signed up to the Paris Agreement, and the U.S. is still in, by the way, can't legally leave until the day after the next presidential election. And if there's a new president, excuse me for a moment, a new president can simply give 30 days notice and we're back in. So in 2020, every nation will be called upon to make an assessment of whether or not they can increase their commitments. We're at the early stages of a sustainability revolution that is giving CEOs and executive teams the ability to manage electrons and atoms and molecules with the same precision IT companies have used to manage bits. It's empowered by the IoT and artificial intelligence, and it's changing everything. It has the magnitude of the Industrial Revolution, but the speed of the digital revolution. So I will predict for you, but I have an addendum, that by 2023, we will be able to say we are now on the way to solving the climate crisis. But here's the addendum. We have to make that prediction come true.
So there's our friend Al Gore. Al Gore. He made many predictions, right? Many of them did not come true, and we're still waiting on some. And so here he says, that we must make this system happen, right? It's not like it'll come. No, we must make this happen. That's what's happening here. And he also pretty much prayed for to make sure Trump doesn't come in, right? Because from the looks of it, he may be one of the only stumbling blocks left for this movement. It looks that way. I don't know. I may just be talking. But it's interesting times. Interesting who's behind all this. And again, I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but times are changing. There's a lot of groups, and these are legitimate groups. The World Economic Forum, people behind the UN. You got Al Gore, who's been involved in all this for a long time. And here we are now. His goal, his projection, 2023. 3 years, actually less, 2 years to get to where he wants to. Bill Gates is talking about it by 2030, that even Africa will be up to date in all this. 3 years for us, 2 years approximately, 10 for everybody else, 9 by now. Let's keep watching.
The COVID-19 crisis has shown us that our old systems are not fit anymore for the 21st century. It has laid bare the fundamental lack of social cohesion, fairness, inclusion, and equality. In short, we need a great reset.
The body pushing the Great Reset happens to be the World Economic Forum and its charismatic German leader, Klaus Schwab, who is calling for Marxist principles.
We have a choice to remain passive, which would lead to the amplification of many of the trends we see today. Polarization, nationalism, racism, and ultimately increased social unrest and conflicts. But we have another choice. We can build a new social contract, particularly integrating the next generation. We can change our behavior to be in harmony with nature again. And we can make sure that the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution are best utilized to provide us with better lives.
Professor Schwab has just released a book titled The Great Reset and has dedicated a large portion of the official WEF website to such articles as Does Capitalism Need Some Marxism to Survive?
It is obvious that we are in the midst of the most severe crisis the world has experienced since World War II. Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight the severe virus, but to shape the system for the need for the post-corona era. We have to mobilize all constituents of our global society to work together. We must not miss this unique window of opportunity.
So Time reports a better economy is possible, but we need to reimagine capitalism to do it. And so, again, this is all about how we're going to restructure our economy, how we're going to recreate the capitalist system. The same economic system, it says, that created so much prosperity in the golden age of American capitalism in the 1950s and 60s is now creating inequality and climate change. This is the big push behind this. And so it continues down here and it says, building such virtuous economic system is not a utopian ideal. It's not utopian to think that everybody can receive the same equality, receive the same treatment, receive the same pay, right? It's not ideal. It's not utopian, right? Most people, including business leaders, investors, community leaders, have a similar attitude about their role in the world and the lives of others. Most people want to do good and believe that doing so will ultimately benefit everyone, including a company's shareholders. Everybody in the world wants to do good, right? That's why we don't have murderers. We don't have Adolf Hitler. We don't have, rapists and all these different people. We don't have that in the world because everybody wants to do good. We don't have the top CEOs making tons of profit. 1% of the population holds a majority of the wealth. We don't have that because we believe that most people or all people want to do well. Okay, let's continue. But what's been missing in recent decades is clear compass to guide those in leading positions in our society and economy. So if we just guide them, we'll get them to do what we need them to do. In September, my belief that a more virtuous capitalist system is possible was reaffirmed by an initiative of the Forum's International Business Council led by Brian Mohnian of Bank of America. It says, what is the gender pay gap in Company X? How many people of diverse backgrounds were hired and promoted? What progress has the company made toward reducing greenhouse gas emissions? How much did the company pay in taxes globally per jurisdiction? And what did the company do to hire and train employees? So these are going to be the questions that are going to be asked in order to provide this system, right? That will totally function. And so when we look at this, you got to ask yourself, why? What is this? You have this utopian idea, and this has been the biggest complaint of people on the side of, we don't want socialism, we don't want communism, is that utopia doesn't exist. Human nature it does not lend itself to do always, of course there's some people who behave, some people who try to do well, but as a whole, that's just not how it works. It doesn't matter if you look at communist China, if you look at other socialist countries, if you look at the US, which is capitalistic, it doesn't matter which system you have, you're going to have corruption. It's just human nature. So here it says, again, this by the World Economic Forum, does capitalism need some Marxism to survive the fourth industrial revolution? And that's the question, right? Are we talking about Marxism? It says one option is to literally make employment cheaper by scrapping all income taxes and shifting the shortfall to taxes on land value, corporate profits, natural resources, and hydrocarbon energy generation. So here's this whole redistribution of wealth, right? It's the modifying or eliminating, according to this, scrapping all income taxes. Sounds great on the surface, right? But I guess that would depend on, number one, what they're giving you, right? What scraps. And also it talks about taxes on land value. Well, who's going to own the land? And corporate profits and natural resources and so on and so forth. And finally, there's an option currently being touted around Europe that governments pay a basic monthly salary to all citizens. This has been tossed around for a while. It's essentially a universal basic monthly salary. So whether you go work or you don't, or you do whatever, right? Because everybody's going to want to do good, according to this, right? Everybody wants to provide for everybody else. Okay. That's the concept behind this. That's the idea that the government will essentially pay you just because. They're just going to pay you basic monthly salary to all citizens. It says aside from shock value, it seems Somewhat odd that governments currently engaged in slashing budgets for public services would suddenly find colossal funds to subsidize mass consumption. So how do we pay for that? How do we pay for everybody to receive a basic universal income? It says at first glance, paying everyone a basic income would massively increase government debt. Obviously, right? Where do you pull this money from? Leading to an inevitable default. If a government's powers to issue notes and coins was extended to digital money, then that additional stimulus could enter circulation via the wages of its employees. So, in other words, right? And this is how I'm understanding this. Governments can issue more. They can create more notes, more money, right? So we have right now. We keep on printing out money, printing. Money that is based on nothing, right? It's paper. It's worthless. It has essentially no value. We're going to make it even worse, right? Because at least that's tangible. Now we're going to go to digital money, and we can just increase digital money just like you're playing a video game, right? Pushing a button, and it just keeps on going up. It's great. It's wonderful. This would act to reduce borrowing and tax collection while maintaining purchasing power. And so we just make more money. We increase wages, right? And so we put it out there as wages for employees, which then this would act to reduce borrowing and tax collection while maintaining purchasing power. So we don't have to tax as much because we're just making money out of nothing. And then you can just go buy stuff and it just kind of recirculates, right? You buy, and then it's kind of what we have right now, except worse. Sadly, most politicians don't understand that over 95% of money in most countries is now created by private banks. It's what I was saying, right? Our Federal Reserve is printing out money based on nothing, and they fail to see the opportunity of expanding their own fiscal power by creating their own money in line with the digital age. And so here we have, and this whole concept of cryptocurrency and all these things that are coming out right now, this is where it's going. They're going to make money out of nothing, and that system based on nothing is worthless. And you're going to continue essentially producing these fake currencies until it falls apart. The type of technical advances promised by the fourth industrial revolution could see the cost of production fall away way below prices currently offered by Chinese manufacturers to the rest of the world. Hence, the cross-pollination of ideas between capitalism and Marxism is worthy of serious discourse. A future characterized by mass unemployment, gross inequality, and unrest demands it. Right now, because of COVID, this is what's being said, right? We do have mass unemployment. We have apparently gross inequality. I've been saying that for a while. And then unrest, right? We have unrest. Well, right now it's for different reasons, but essentially they outline pretty much everything that the current administration has been, I guess, pushing, which is nationalism. And then they threw inequality, and then they threw in racism and all these other things. They kind of all surface at the same time. Rather interesting, I would say. So, that being said, let's continue.
Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight severe virus, but to shape the system.
We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again.
The Great Reset is a welcome recognition that this human tragedy must be a wake-up call. It is imperative that we reimagine, rebuild, redesign, reinvigorate, and rebalance our world.
We had already income inequality that was fueling income, race, gender inequality. We have a climate emergency, which we can't walk away from. There's no doubt that the very survival of the human race requires us to act.
And then we need to couple that with new initiatives to equip more people with the digital skills they'll need, not just to have a tech job, but a job that is increasingly tech enabled in almost every part of the economy. If we can empower consumers with all of this, I think we unleash this next generation to have a much broader impact more quickly.
We can never again allow our health, education, care systems to be underfunded.
We not only have to demand change, but also create change.
We have to live up to the expectations which we have created, and we will do so.
So one final story I just want to briefly touch on, super brief. So Newsweek puts out, Proud Boys infighting sees leading member form breakaway group to fight white genocide. Okay. Now, this was kind of a surprise because from my understanding, they really weren't a group of white nationalists. But from the sounds of it, they could be. So it says white nationalist Kyle Chapman, who set up a tactical defense arm of the Proud Boys, a fraternal order of alt-knights or folk, has criticized the group's chairman, Enrique Tarrio, while announcing a so-called rebranding of the organization. Now, Tarrio, my understanding, number one, he's a Latino. And so he was essentially the face of this group, which pretty much led a good portion of the people to understand that it wasn't a white nationalist or Nazi group, right? Well, then this comes out. Interesting revelation here. And so I thought, okay, so who's this Kyle Chapman? So I just did a brief search. East Bay Express. So it says white nationalist. This was back in Friday, July 6th of 2018, a couple years ago. White nationalist Kyle Based Stickman was what they called him, Chapman. And apparently he was beating people with a stick, which is why he got the name. Arrested for felony assault with a deadly weapon. It says a prominent member of the far right who lives in the Bay Area was arrested in Oakland on July 3rd and being held in Alameda County, Santa Rita jail without bail on charges that he assaulted a man in Texas in a Texas bar fight 1 year ago. And so there's quite a bit on this guy, and he's essentially breaking away, and he is essentially saying that he's going to now fight. So it says here, going back to Newsweek, it says, we will no longer, this is a quote, we will no longer cut to the left by appointing token Negroes as our leaders. Wow. We will no longer allow homosexuals or other undesirables into our ranks. We will confront the Zionist criminals who wish to destroy our civilization. We recognize that the West was built by the white race alone, and we owe nothing to any other race. Wow, unquote. So this group is evolving before our eyes. Some people were saying it was there. I just saw this other guy and figured that they weren't, but I'm not sure. It's very confusing because they collaborated, and obviously this Enrique Tarrio guy, he obviously is not part of that group. So he was the head of it, and so I don't understand. I have to look into it a little more, but interesting stuff just came out, and so we'll see where it goes. Things are getting more and more interesting every day. Stay safe. And that's what I have for you guys today. A lot of crazy stuff coming up. Changes happening. A lot of infighting, a lot of outfighting. They're looking to change our whole system. We're looking to be locked down a little more, possibly a lot more. We're looking to be vaccinated. We're looking to be having an outside group, such as the World Economic Forum and other groups from the outside, come in and tell us how to run our government. A lot of stuff happening. Good time, seek the Lord. That's all I got to say. You guys take care. Thank you guys for stopping by. Like, subscribe, hit the buttons below, hit everything. Come back, share it, and share it, and share it. And remember, stay safe. Keep an eye out. Seek the Lord, and we'll see you guys. Don't forget about our other channel, One Mediator Cross Analysis, where we look at some of these stories and we look at it through a biblical lens. Don't forget to check that out right up here, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.